Here's a book called The Truth About Hillary by Edward Klein, subtitled What She Knew, When She Knew It, and How Far She'll Go to Become President. Let's see. Hillary's Brain, Chapter 19, page 125. Oh, there's Hillary. There's Hillary when she's young, that classic picture of the young Hillary in college with those wild striped pants. Page 125. In times of crisis, Hillary always returned to the same playbook, the same simple life lessons she had learned from her father and mother. Lesson number 1, never allow yourself to be a victim. Lesson number 2, if somebody hits you, hit him or her back harder. Lesson number 3, stay in control of your own destiny. At some point on her way back from Baltimore, it seemed to have occurred to her that she did not have to be a victim of the Lewinsky scandal. On the contrary, she could turn the scandal to her own advantage. After 4 years of living in the political wilderness, she had the opportunity to get out there and fight the neighborhood bully, in this case her political enemies on the right. Upon her return to the White House, Hillary called Sidney Blumenthal. A former journalist, Blumenthal was an influential presidential policy advisor who understood the press better than anyone in the White House. She needed to see him right away, Hillary told Blumenthal. Sid Blumenthal went back a long way with Hillary. They had worked together on Gary Hart's doomed 1984 presidential campaign, where they discovered they had a lot in common. In college, Blumenthal had been a member of the radical Students for a Democratic Society. In law school, Hillary had worked on behalf of the violence-prone group known as the Black Panthers. As members of the New Left, both Sid Blumenthal and Hillary Rodham manifested the qualities that historian Richard Hofstadter identified in his 1963 landmark study, The Paranoid Style in American Politics: heated exaggeration, suspiciousness, and conspiratorial fantasy. In fact, Hofstadter might have had Sid Blumenthal and Hillary Rodham in mind when he wrote, "Since what is at stake is always a conflict between absolute good and absolute evil, what is necessary is not compromise, but the will to fight things out to a finish. Since the enemy is thought of as being totally evil and totally unappeasable, he must be eliminated. It is hard to resist the conclusion that this enemy is on many counts the projection of the self. Both the ideal and the unacceptable aspects of the self are attributed to him." Jeffrey Toobin, in his book A Vast Conspiracy, described Blumenthal as perhaps the most partisan member of the Clintons' circle. In a White House and a Capitol where people tried to slice issues into narrow, achievable objectives, Blumenthal saw the world in a broad sweep of ideological conflict between the Clintons and what he invariably called the right wing. Blumenthal's predilection for conspiracy theories prompted his colleague Rahm Emanuel to nickname him GK for Grassy Knoll. Blumenthal occupied a windowless basement office in a room that used to serve as the White House barbershop. From these subterranean Phantom of the Opera depths, he spun what the political writer Joe Klein described as vast, obscure, Manichaean fantasies about the world outside the gates. Blumenthal plotted Hillary's defenses against the sinister forces of the media and the right. His enemies' list included the Washington Post's Susan Schmidt, who had broken many Whitewater stories and whom Hillary had tried to get fired. Blumenthal was also behind a smear campaign against Special Prosecutor Kenneth Starr and his staff, some of whom he accused of being gay or of having sex with members of the media. The West Wing reporters bestowed many nicknames on Blumenthal: Sid Vicious, Rasputin, the Dirt Devil, but the one that seemed most appropriate was Hillary's Brain. It didn't take Sid Blumenthal long to make it from his office in the White House basement to the family residence. Dressed in pinstripes and French cuffs, Blumenthal cut a dandyish figure. His hair, graying at the temples, fell in carefully arranged curls onto his forehead in the manner of the English actor Hugh Grant. In fact, Blumenthal was such an out-and-out Anglophile that some White House aides joked he spent more time on the phone with British Prime Minister Tony Blair's aides in London than he did with anyone in the Clinton administration. Hillary explained that this Lewinsky story involved Clinton's concern for a person with personal problems, a common occurrence since she had known him. Blumenthal wrote in a typical example of the big lie. His empathy, she went on, came from his relationship with his mother, an open, compassionate woman, and from Clinton's own difficult experiences growing up. I knew, of course, what she was referring to, being fatherless and poor, the often terrifying battles with his alcoholic, abusive stepfather. In explaining what had happened, she relied upon her understanding of her husband. I assumed that she had spoken with him and that what she was saying reflected their conversation. For her, Blumenthal continued, the stakes were greater than for anyone. They encompassed not only everything she had worked on politically for a lifetime, but her marriage. She had to defend both. Hillary could not admit that she had known about Bill's escapades with Monica Lewinsky. That would have only confirmed people's worst suspicions that her marriage was a political arrangement rather than a true love match. Imagine that.